Welcome back to Novelio. Today is Friday, April 30th, 2021. I'm going to continue on with the reading of Hot Winter Sun by Jessica Russell. Robert made his way downstairs for breakfast, deciding to let Catherine sleep and have something brought to her later. Julian was already at the breakfast board and immediately began venting his annoyance. "You should go and have this ridiculous marriage annulled at once," he said, without so much as a good morning. "Immediately, or may I have some breakfast first?" laughed Robert. "I can't think what has come over you. Do you have any idea what our father will say? This is entirely unacceptable, and yet you joke about it as if it is some prank that you have pulled on the family." "Well, if I have given the impression that I think it's a laughing matter, I apologize. I don't believe my new wife would care to have her marriage referred to as a prank. Besides, after you so rudely departed yesterday, Catherine and I visited our father, and he was quite happy. I believe the word he used was splendid when describing her. Well, he is clearly trying to avoid upsetting you. He can't be pleased with this stunt. What the devil were you thinking? I understand what is attractive about her. I'm not a blind man, after all. However, it's unfair to her and the rest of the family to place her in a position for which she's entirely unfit." "Well, there is where you are wrong, brother," Robert replied, "because Catherine is as educated as you and me by a strange chain of coincidences. She can hold her own in a conversation better than many men I know. Her manners are impeccable, and she has a sweet and pleasant disposition. Can I ask, other than her lack of money and worldly goods, what makes her so unsuitable?" "Her background, obviously," Julian replied, recognizing the inadequacy of his own answer. "And that will soon cease to be a 9 days' wonder, and the gossip mongers hereabouts will find something else to prattle about." Robert grinned at his brother and passed him the teapot, but was furiously waved away. He laughed again and went on. "We were going to be married next month in a normal church ceremony, which I had planned to speak to you about, but then there was this abrupt change." "Of course there was. Is she pregnant?" "You shouldn't go too far, Julian. Words cannot be taken back, and you will regret those as the years go on." His tone was rather harsh, but suddenly he was again smiling. "You act as if someone has died, brother. No, Catherine is not pregnant. At least she was not when we were married yesterday. As far as this morning, who can say?" He was unable to resist goading his twin. "I find it impossible to believe you haven't dallied with her before last night," he replied dryly. "You should lower your voice. I won't be pleased if she comes upon us discussing her this way. But since you think you're entitled to an explanation for every move I make, the Puritan father of hers instilled such fear concerning the wrath of God that I was shocked when she even accepted my proposal without his permission. I was certainly not about to tempt her to forestall the marriage vows. Yes, I'm sure she played her part very well, which made her even more desirable to you. You've likely been exploited, and she's merely after your fortune. Well, then you best take over my affairs at once, since I am both addled-brained and easily manipulated by a village girl." Robert replied jocularly. Even though Julian was furious, he could never be entirely irate in his brother's presence, due to the latter's outstanding ability to maintain a good nature regardless of what was hurled at him and by whom. He secretly wanted to have the same approach to life, but somehow his mother's more cynical outlook had come through stronger in him than this twin. Robert was far more like their father. He was certainly as wise as Julian in the ways of the world, but did not always look for false motives in people, preferring to judge character by instinct rather than surface actions. "I still say you will come to regret this," Julian said, and strode from the room. In doing so, he practically collided with Catherine in the hallway, who had just been making her way to the breakfast board. Manners dictated that he apologize for not watching his steps, and this he did. Then, bowing slightly, said, "Good morning." She immediately regained her composure. "Good morning, Julian," she said with absolutely no expression. He couldn't help but wonder at this, but learned later that it was the result of many years in her father's home, where virtually any show of emotion was against his strict rules. However, at the time he cared nothing for her personal idiosyncrasies. He was seeing for reasons even he did not yet understand. Upon seeing Catherine, Robert said that he had planned to have her served in their rooms. "No, I wanted to come down with you, but I drifted off again after being awake very early," she said with a smile. "What were you up to, then?" Robert replied, pulling her to him for a kiss. "Nothing really," she answered. "I just found myself wide awake and looking out at the beautiful scenery and lost the time. Suddenly I felt fatigued and am now horrified to realize how long I slept." "Not a bit of it. I'm glad you slept. Yesterday was too much excitement for you." "Then how shall I ever meet the excitement awaiting me in Venice?" "I won't let you become too far exerted," Robert said. "Now kiss me once more before any curious servants find their way here." Catherine laughed and went into his arms, and not long after the two were dressed and ready to depart. Venice was every bit as magnificent as Catherine had imagined, and the days flew by. There was a feeling of unreality to it, and she savored each moment. To have left the blacksmith's cottage and become lady of a grand manor was almost too much to comprehend. But now to have her every whim catered to in what was certainly the most romantic city in the world made her feel as if she were living in a dream. Robert wanted everything to be perfect, and had let a beautiful palazzo in Venice, featuring a lovely veranda from where they could watch the gondolas go past. Catherine thought it was particularly enchanting in the evenings, especially when the gondoliers sang romantic songs to their passengers. The palazzo itself was outstanding, with its attractive arches and towers at each end. Catherine marveled at the ornate furniture, marble-paved floors, and alabaster lamps. The bridal suite was lovely as well, with its carved bed and canopy of gold and white silk. She told Robert she had never seen such a mesmerizing place. They walked through the alleyways lapped by the canal's water and enjoyed standing on Rialto Bridge, watching the gondoliers, or enjoying a hot drink in St. Mark's Square. She found the little shops fascinating, and although she never asked for anything, Robert took note of what she liked and had it sent to the palazzo. He pointed out the wonders of the campanile, which he told Catherine was begun as early as the year 905. Catherine marveled at the Teatro San Cassiano, the world's first public opera house, built in 1637. She knew her mother had always longed to see it, but Lillian had not been to Italy since she was a young girl. Robert made sure to take Catherine to see the clock tower and Bridge of Sighs, the latter of which she heard her mother describe in great detail. The wide alleys were gay and sparked of life, while the smaller streets could be sinister and dark. Robert was careful to keep her away from areas of crime. They were strange, dreamlike days, and Catherine felt as if they had cast a spell over her, and she would never again be exactly who she was in her father's home. She supposed that was a good thing, though, and smiled, thinking that soon Robert would find a way to reunite her with her siblings. One day she suddenly said, "I think God was watching out for me last year when old Mrs. Black died, and I was called upon to teach William and Eleanor. Of course, my father used the money to help fund the parliamentary army," and she said with a sigh, "but if not, he would never have allowed me to work in a royalist household." It's interesting how he could justify it when he wanted funds for such dastardly purposes. I can't say I'm sorry, though. I not only learned how to teach, but as a governess, it is amazing what I learned about how such households are run and what is expected. I believe that is the only thing that would have saved me with your family. Otherwise, I would have appeared exactly what I was, a villager, suddenly installed in a large estate, not knowing which end of a kerchief to pick up. Robert laughed again at this and gathered her closer. "I would have told you exactly what to do, but you were already more than capable." They went on then to speak of Christopher, and Catherine wondered aloud when he would return and what he had discovered concerning the Puritan army. "I can't believe I once thought this war would be stomped out in a few months. Now it seems we are doomed," Catherine said as they sat on the couch late one evening. She sighed and watched the breeze as it lifted the curtains to the terrace, sending them in whimsical, flowing moments that she enjoyed. However light-hearted she felt when viewing such scenes, though she couldn't stop herself from asking Robert why the war had turned so favorably for the parliamentarians rather than King Charles. "I know we are losing, Robert. Tell me why." Robert looked thoughtful for several moments and then decided she was far too intelligent to be placated with overly optimistic platitudes. "Well, the Battle of Roundway Down was the last true victory that I can think of for the Royalists, and that was in July of 43, which seems so long ago now. Then there were heavy losses on each side that September at Newbury as well. Ultimately, however, the true problem is that fewer and fewer people are willing to support the king as time goes on. He adamantly refuses to compromise in any way, and England, quite frankly, has had enough of him. I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but that is the heart of the problem. Of course, Cornwall is always a different matter. We've certainly had our victories, and I believe Sir Greenville will drive the Parliamentarian soldiers back across the water. It's been hinted that we were perhaps going to form our own country and break away from England. That, however, has been hinted at for so long without any real move to do so," he added with a smile. Wasn't that long ago botched arrest of the kings what really started the war?" Catherine asked. "That's what most believe. In January of 42 he ordered the arrest of 5 members of the House of Commons and 1 from the House of Lords. When everyone refused to enforce it, His Majesty tried to do so himself. He took 400 men with him, but the members he wanted arrested had already left, and by all accounts his reaction was one stoic statement: 'It appears all my birds have flown.' Thus spurned, he departed for England's northern regions, where he eventually raised his standard at Nottingham Castle. This was regarded as an overt declaration of war against Parliament. Initially, the parliamentarians had no desire to commit treason. Rather, they wanted to make a deal with King Charles on their own terms. As if His Majesty would agree to anyone's terms save his own or his bad advisers, Catherine replied, feeling freer to speak her mind far away in Venice, and Robert agreed. Queen Henrietta Maria had the audacity to go Holland to try to raise funds for her husband's army by pawning off some of the royal jewels. It is said that all pawn agents turned her down, claiming that the jewels were not her personal property, but rather belonged to the crown. I suppose they were concerned that the sales might be contested at some future point. Some say she did manage to sell a few smaller pieces, but no one really knows. To answer your question, though, that ridiculous arrest attempt was the turning point. It was politically disastrous for King Charles. What English sovereign ever presumed to breach privilege in that manner? Entering the House of Commons to arrest its members, we may never know how much he lost with that one misguided act, but thousands upon thousands immediately turned on him. Was that not when Parliament seized London? Yes, and then the king responded by trying to seize the military arsenal at Hull, but the town's parliamentary governor would not even allow him access, and His Majesty had to withdraw. It's as if he just can't stop charging ahead, as if he's God, and no one else can seem to stop him either. I can't wait to discover what Christopher found out on his last trip. Can we pray again tonight for his safe return? Of course, sweetheart, and I have a feeling God will answer. I think we will see him again soon. I wish he had been there when my mother died. I don't know how I managed on my own. I don't think I will ever forget finding her, so unlike herself, so cold and still. The physician said that her heart had failed her. She had been worse off for some weeks, but my father refused to be anxious about her, claiming that whatever happened was God's will. I thought perhaps I was heartless, pushing you into marriage 2 months after she died, but I know it was what she wanted. Of course, when something traumatic happens, it is often best to get right away for a spell and find strength in new surroundings. Oh, Robert, it's been wonderful. She turned to him. If she can see me from heaven that we are here together, I know she is at peace. Despite wanting to hold each moment in the palm of her hand, Catherine realized the days were rushing past. She enjoyed searching for gifts for everyone and suddenly realized there was only another day and they would be on their way home. Only at their last breakfast together in Venice did worries about being accepted creep back into her mind.